So I just had a realization, which was that I had ordered the Rumbling Hearts box set, but I'd ordered the starter pack box set. So I had to go and track down a used copy of Volume 2 and 3 and order those as well from the Amazon pipeline. And I mean, I realized that having done it the way that I did, bought it from on the used market, and what else what else could I possibly expect when this DVD set is an old anime. I would love to be able to buy it directly from the distributor itself. You know what I mean? Like the people that originally made it in the original studio behind the project, because at least then and there, the people that originally made it were getting some kind of royalty out of my having purchased it. But I do believe I will be the final person that houses this, and that I will never sell it. I love this particular series and feel it was one of the greatest animes of all time. And I think that it's absolutely regrettable that we have a group of people here on YouTube that, frankly, I just, like I said in my previous video, I have a sentimentality of, the reality is that there are some people that just anime just wasn't for. You know what I mean? And those people should not be criticizing the series. And America is one of them. Like, it just was never, he was never intended for this particular anime. And I think I thought it was disappointing, and I thought that it was disappointing that people like that had managed to influence people's perception of this anime so much so by way of their criticism, because a lot of the fans of anime would come here on YouTube and come see exactly what people had to say about it. And when they did come here on YouTube and see that there were people trash talking it, would decide, hey, maybe it isn't for me. And that's my point about all this. Rumbling Hearts, or Kimi ga no Zumin, used to be at the very top of one of the top two animes on my anime list, if you did not know this. I mean, I wish that I had access to a Wayback Machine so that I could show you I think the Wayback Machine may be able to show you on archive.org that it used to be much higher on the My Anime List rankings, and then all of a sudden it fell off a cliff. And it's not really explained why it fell off a cliff, Like nobody is able. Maybe a bunch of new animes came in that were rated higher than it, but it was not, perceived all that badly. It was near the top of the list, like circa 2000, like back in the early aughts. And the earlier part of it, and then all of a sudden it just started crashing and went to shit. And that was right about the time that it started to gain a North American, audience on the projects. After it was brought over to the United States as Rumbling Hearts, it started to fall off a cliff. And it's just, I think that those of us that originally thought very highly of this series were right originally, and that the change in sentiments is just wrong. And it's being done because of the fact that there are a bunch of people here on YouTube that are vocal and have managed to tarnish the way this anime is perceived by other people by making fun of it and making a bunch of jokes about it that just, as though somebody joking about this anime proves that it's a bad anime. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't follow logically. I mean, just because somebody's satirizing something doesn't mean that, their points about in their satire are good points that they're making at all. I mean, it didn't take a genius to realize that Haruka wasn't staring at a pencil blushing because pencil, but because her mind wasn't on the pencil at all. Like, I found sitting through these hard way takedowns of these series to be, just absolutely insufferable as far as an experience, and I just found myself cringing the whole way. I mean, I could go further into his video series about this, but I know how I feel about this series, and I know that no amount of critique thrown at it by YouTube and by the critics on this platform will really transform my absolute love of this series into hatred. It really was one of the best animes I've ever seen. And I have my anime list. If you want to see it, that I can put in the underbar. It's not like I've watched all the animes, and I mean, like, compared to somebody that's like a complete obsessive and weed, it's true. Like, a potential point that could be made against me is that I've seen, like, let me go in and check like the list of series that I've actually watched. Okay, it's true, but in a way, I mean, I've watched a lot of romance animes. I continue to watch them, by the way. So, how many series has your boy completed? Here, let me go check. So, it completed 70 series, but that's certainly more than a lot of people that aren't like super into anime have sat through. Although to be fair, that 70 includes some hentai series that haven't been censored from my list, but I did that just so that it would the recommendations engine would send things my way. But let me do a check to see how many of these are that way. And by the way, I'm not going to include ones that had a storyline on top of it. So they're a good storyline like Kite, like that's not going to happen. Fifth one, and let me scroll. Okay, there's two. Three. So yeah, there's about three of them that you can remove as hentai. So that's about like what 77 titles. And yeah, I feel very strongly about Kite. By the way, like I don't feel that I feel that Kite has some hentai scenes in it, but it doesn't really count as a true hentai simply because of the fact that there's more to this series than just the sex scenes that are in it. A lot more to it, and I very much so am a fan of Kite. By the way, I like it. I liked it. I find it to be a very good anime on the top of it, but it does have its sex scene that got it in trouble ultimately. But yeah, so about 77 pure animes. And if you're really going to be a stickler, 76. But I'm not.